Hello, students here at Purdue University and podcast listeners around the country. Welcome to Next Point Wins. I am your host, Matthew Geely. We have a full hour of sports talk to get you up to date in the world of sports. Plenty of Purdue basketball talk with a recap of last weekend and a preview of Friday night's game against Texas Tech. But first, I'd like to start by bringing in our guest on today's show. We are happy to welcome in CBS Sports bracketologist and sports writer. They call him Mr. RPI, or at least I do, because he was one of the ones who got that going. An alum of Purdue University, Jerry Palm. Mr. Palm, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I want to start off by just kind of talking about the bracket and the process as a whole, because you spend a lot of time throughout the year trying to predict the bracket. So I guess the first question, it's a pretty easy one. After the committee reveals who's actually in the tournament, do you then fill out a bracket?
Oh, of course. Yeah. In fact, I'm required to. CBS posts what they call expert brackets, and I guess they consider me an expert, so they want one from me on Sunday night right away. So I don't even get a lot of time to think about it. I just have to do one pretty quickly.
And how's it doing at the moment?
It's on fire like everybody else's, but the left half is smoldering. The right half is still in pretty good shape. I had Purdue and Duke in the Final Four, with Duke winning the championship. Purdue is, of course, still alive, although I think it's a much more difficult task now without Isaac Haas. The left half, I had Arizona and North Carolina, and neither one of those teams lasted very long.
So when you go through trying to predict the bracket throughout the year, you've done this for a lot of years now. Do you have like a set list of things, like a checklist that you go through with each one of these teams that maybe from previous years that can help you kind of decide around what seed they will be and what region they might find themselves in?
Well, there is. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially the process, is that, I look at these teams and the characteristics of their season and the kinds of things that the committee looks for. And essentially, in a lot of ways, it's behavior analysis. What has the committee rewarded in the past? What kinds of things are they looking for? How much do this year's teams have that kind of thing? And so with selection and seeding, it's that kind of thing. Seeding, though, is relative, so it's a little trickier because the competition isn't the same every year. But in terms of selections, there are certain things that the committee is looking for, and so you look for teams that have at least done well in some of those qualities at the bottom of the bracket, though you find teams that are flawed in some way or another. Otherwise, they would be higher up.
And speaking like teams that are flawed, I mean, every year it seems like we have debate about teams like this year, Syracuse and Oklahoma, making the tournament when you have teams like Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, St. Mary's staying at home. Do you believe there's like an overall flaw with this selection process that needs to be fixed, or do you think that the debate is good for the sport?
Well, there's always going to be a line somewhere, and there's going to be teams on both sides of it that could, the teams that got left out that could have been in, teams that got in that could have been left out, gave the committee a reason to leave them out, but you have to fill a 68-team field. So for me, the flaw is 68 teams. You go back to 64. But even, it doesn't really matter how big the tournament is. There's always going to be a group of teams that are equally flawed in different ways, and the committee's got to take some of those teams to fill the bracket. So it's, there's always going to be that debate.
Do you run into a problem with fans or people who comment on your bracket when you're filling it out that it's not exactly – is it hard to separate, I guess, between where your head thinks when you're trying to predict this bracket and then what you think the selection committee thinks?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the job, is I'm trying to predict what they're going to do. So, my own biases don't really matter. I've been doing it for long enough that separating out what I think – what I would do if I were a committee member voting versus what I expect them to do it's actually pretty easy for me to separate that out because I've been doing it for so long.
What do you think the top moment of the tournament has been thus far?
Well, besides Purdue making the Sweet 16, Virginia losing to Maryland, Baltimore County, the first time we've ever had a 16 beat a 1. And for them to do it, for UMBC to do it in such dominating fashion is probably just as surprising the margin of victory as it is the victory itself, because they just ran them out of the gym. Virginia never had a chance and looked just completely lost couldn't figure out how to stop UMBC from getting to the basket or from hitting three-pointers. They got a lot of good looks. They had a great game plan, executed it very well, and Virginia just had no answer and couldn't come back because they play a very structured style that doesn't, when you speed them up, they don't even know what to do.
Yeah, just looking at that team as a whole. And Virginia, it feels like that every time they go into this tournament, we are weary of them because we know they play great defense, but it's always a question of can they score enough. I imagine with years to come now, this is something that's going to carry with them for a long time, wouldn't you say?
Well, the reputation will be there until they do something to break it, Yeah. And other schools have had that reputation over time, too. It's not just them. It just seems like when they fail spectacularly. This is one way they did it. They let a double-digit seeded Syracuse come back on them a couple of years ago in an Elite Eight game. And, I mean, you could argue the two biggest upsets in maybe college basketball history, Virginia was the victim of because they lost to Chaminade when they had Ralph Sampson and were the number one team in the country. And at that point, Chaminade wasn't even an NCAA school. They were NAIA. So that's one of the biggest upsets in the history of sports. This is certainly, one of the biggest upsets in the history of the tournament.
Yeah. Throughout the entire season, the story has been about the FBI investigation and some of these top-tier programs getting looked into. Do you think that had some impact on some of these schools when it came into the tournament? Because we've had a lot of top programs lose early in the tournament that were in that investigation.
Well, I don't think it impacted the tournament so much as it impacted some of these teams, their seasons. Like, for example, Louisville. Who wasn't actually named in the investigation, but, people knew reading the original notes from the FBI back in September or October that Louisville was a part of it, and Rick Pitino's gone, and they lose a top recruit, and their season isn't quite what you would have expected it to be. Arizona had problems this year. USC missed the tournament. Oklahoma State missed the tournament. Auburn is the only one that seems to have survived it pretty well. Chuck Person gets arrested, they lose two recruits, and they end up winning the SEC anyway, even though they ended up going out of the tournament early. It was still a really good season by Auburn standards and by what was expected of them before and after the FBI got involved. So, yeah, a lot of these teams were impacted by it. I don't think Arizona's loss had anything to do with the FBI. Arizona's loss had to do with not showing up in the second half.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Are you going to any of the sites for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 this weekend?
Yeah, well, I was in Nashville. I'm going to be in Boston.
Oh, nice.
So fortunate for me because we had to decide in late February where we were going. So I at that point couldn't even be sure Purdue was going to be in Detroit because it was just after the loss to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So I just picked places I liked or hadn't been too much and ended up getting lucky and catching Purdue's regional. And so I will get to see the senior class finish their careers however it finishes.
Awesome. So finish this sentence for me then. Purdue beats Texas Tech if
the guards play well. Carson Edwards struggled against Butler. He hasn't had very many bad games this season, certainly not since the beginning of February. He's been one of the best players in the country since the beginning of February. But they're going to need him to be him. Vince Edwards has to stay on the floor. He had 4 fouls, each of which was basically unnecessary, and really the kind of fouls a senior shouldn't commit. Dakota's got to play well. PJ's had a great game against Butler. Those 4 guys are going to have to play well, and then they got really good bench production. Matt Harms, filling in for Isaac Haas, did what you hoped that he would do. Jaquil Taylor came in and gave him some quality minutes too, like he did in the World University games.
Yep.
And it's all hands on deck without Isaac Haas. But Texas Tech's guards are really good. Keenan Evans is an All-American level player, and really, I don't know that they'll match up head to head much on the court. But Carson Edwards versus Keenan Evans is a must-see television.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we let you go, I'm going to give you 4 bubble-busting questions, rapid fire. First thing that pops in the top of your head, go ahead and spit it out for us, all right? So number 1, your favorite spot on Purdue's campus is?
The Hall of Music.
Okay.
I was in the band when I was there, so a lot of fond memories in the Hall of Music.
Nice, nice. Favorite year as far as living? Where'd you live in your 4 years that you liked the most at Purdue?
Cary Quad. I lived for 3 years in Cary Quad, which I really liked because I could step outside the door and I was at Ross 8 or Mackey Arena.
Very nice. I'm a 2-year Cary Quad resident myself. Number 3, would you rather have Matt Harms's hair or Carson Edwards' swagger?
Well, I have to say that on Twitter I get a lot of grief for my hair. So I'm going to have to go with Matt Harm's hair.
All right. Very nice. I think I would do that too. And then last but not least, in a 3-point shooting contest between you and Joe Lunardi, who wins?
I'm not sure either one of us. I think without question basketball loses if Joe Lunardi and I have a 3-point shooting contest.
Very nice. Well, thank you, Jerry Palm, for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at JPPalmCBS. Go to cbssports.com/writers/Jerry Palm to check out all of his articles. Go give him a look. His stuff is fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Jerry Palm. We'll be back right after this on Next Point Wins. Welcome back here. Thank you once again to Mr. Palm for joining us. I know he's a busy guy. It seems like every day he's putting out a new article about this tournament, and you probably saw him quite a bit leading up to the selection show. And during the selection show, he is the guy when it comes to brackets for CBS Sports, the home of the NCAA tournament. So it really means a lot for him to give back to his alma mater and come on here for us. Hopefully we'll be in contact with him again sometime soon. He's a great interview, and thought that was a lot of fun. If you're just joining us and you missed any part of that interview, you can find it on my YouTube page coming up right after the show. I'll post a podcast at Next Point Wins on YouTube. You can go there, and if you missed any past episode, you can check it out there as well. Any comments, questions, or concerns can be emailed to me at nextptwins@gmail.com. Just to go over what we talked about at the top of the show, my name is Matthew Geely. This is Next Point Wins. We still have about 40 minutes left in the show today. All you students back from spring break, welcome back. Hope everybody had a fun, safe time getting back into the grind of the school week, or halfway home and halfway to Friday night, where our Purdue basketball team will be taking on Texas Tech in Boston, Massachusetts for the Sweet 16 and a chance to make it to the Elite 8. We'll have that and much more coming up. We'll do a full preview of the game, scouting report of Texas Tech, what Purdue needs to do to get the job done. And, yeah, so I think that's all the must-say things. So let's go right into the NCAA tournament, because I know it's on everybody's mind, because this last weekend was absolutely insane. It was some of the best and most entertaining basketball I had seen in a long time. And to have it all jumped in together Thursday through Sunday, especially Thursday, Friday. I mean, if you don't like sitting down and watching those games on Thursday and Friday and you didn't have fun doing it, I'm not sure you know what fun is, because I thoroughly enjoyed myself from the tip-off at noon on Thursday to 1 a.m. on Friday watching all those games. And I didn't miss a second of action. I had 4 TVs going in my basement, plenty of snacks and drinks. Had some good company over as well. Some members of the Brainy Bunch came out. We had Mike from Huntertown. And speaking of Mike from Huntertown, I'm going to give him a shout out here. He is the Brainy Bunch brunch. Wow, I'm getting all tongue-tied here. He is the Brainy Bunch member who kind of helped me book Jerry Palm on the show for today. He was listening to him on 670 The Score, I believe. He was Mr. Palm was getting interviewed, and Mike from Huntertown decided to kind of turn me on to him and let me know that he's out doing some interviews, and you might think about coming on the show. So I reached out, and those Bernie Bunch members, they just work hard in the back. Guys in the back are crazy good, and Mike from Huntertown really came through for the show. So special thanks to him. I know he thoroughly appreciates it, and I know I do too. So anyways, I was watching Basement with a bunch of Brainy Bunch members. Dirty Randy even made it over for quite a bit of time. It was good to see him. We're going to need to collaborate with Dirty Randy here coming up on some new audio. It was good to see him, and just start to finish. And I know I asked Jerry Palm what his top moment was of the tournament so far, and he went with UMBC, and that you can't go wrong there because UMBC, that upset of Virginia, it's going to go down in the history books. I don't know when we're going to see it again. I bet we do see it again. I don't know if we have to wait as long as we had to wait to this moment to see a 16-1. But it was amazing to watch, and he put it best. UMBC didn't win on a last-second shot where they got lucky, they hung around all game, or they made a run at the end and then they hit a half quarter at the buzzer to beat them. No, they whooped them in the second half. They, as Mr. Palm said, they ran them off the floor, and that is 100% correct. Virginia could not get a stop, and UMBC was playing phenomenal defense. And once it got to about 12, 15 points, I think Virginia was kind of with 5 minutes to go, you're down 12. It got in their heads, and you can't blame them because it's hard to come back from that. And you got that voice in the back of your head saying, "Oh, we might lose to a 16 seed. We might be the first one to go down." And you could just see it start to unravel. And it was one of those. It's like driving by a bad car crash. You don't want to look, but you just can't not look. Well, it was tough to watch because it was so sad if you're a Virginia fan or one of those Virginia players. But also, I was watching history, and I couldn't get enough of it. So I thought that game was amazing. And then my personal favorite moment of the tournament so far has got to be Sister Jean Dolores Schmidt from Loyola. She is just a hoot, isn't she? Just sometimes it looks like she doesn't know where she's at. And I think she's 98. I think is what I read, 96, 98. If I was that old, I hope I'm looking as good as she is. But I tell you what, everyone when they won, I think it's hard for her to see sometimes. She's in a wheelchair. I'm sure she has trouble moving around. I'm guessing at some point, since she's a little lower than somebody standing up, if everybody stands, she might have trouble seeing. A couple times it looked like she was tugging on the pant leg of the person next to him trying to figure out what happened. But, man, she is funny. Her interviews are awesome. She only has Loyola making it to the Sweet 16 in her bracket. She has them losing this next game. So all the players are talking about how they're going to have to go out and prove her wrong, which is hysterically funny. And just a nice old lady chaplain, and she gets more airtime than anybody else in this entire tournament. And it's only going to get, in my opinion, better. Some people might think worse as the tournament goes on if they keep on winning. It's funny how many people picked that upset early on. I was reading that and listening to that from a lot of people saying that they had a great shot at beating Miami. Now, less people thought they could beat Tennessee. And, the shot at the buzzer, that thing hit the front of the rim, and, it just seemed like it had no business going in. And that thing just went way up into the air, got a nice roll down, hit every part of the rim, and drops in for him. And that was after Tennessee, great comeback, just firing threes. You had Nevada down by 22, coming back to beat Cincinnati, and that was after being down double digits. I think it was 15 against Texas in the second half. So Cincinnati, though, boy, you want to talk about falling apart. You want to talk about just absolutely gripping in a game. I don't know how you can be up 22 with 10 to play and lose, especially the way they did. Nevada got hot, and they got a lot of good three-point shooting players, and we knew that. Now they get an interesting matchup against Loyola. So you're going to have an 11 or a 7 seed in that Elite 8. That South bracket is just a mess. Is anybody else completely closed off? Mine's completely, it's shut down. I had Arizona going to the Final Four out of that bracket, and I had Tennessee meeting them in the Elite Elite 8. So, that was tough. That's a tough bracket. I know I'm in the majority that their bracket's pretty much blown up, just like Jerry Palm's has. And then you look at the matchups coming up this weekend. I'm going to give you my predictions here in a moment. But first, I want to make sure I get in a little bit of recap of Purdue basketball. And I know a lot of you know that I work for the Purdue basketball team. And so I get I hear information and stuff like that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I do not know anything that everybody else already knows or is reported on Twitter and on the news sites. That is to the extent of what I know at the moment. But let's just put aside the whole getting a brace, maybe Isaac Haas gets to play. Let's just go back to the beginning. That game was going perfect. We had a little bit of a hiccup in the first half. We kept them around at halftime. We came out in the second half, and we put the pedal down, and we floored them. As you would expect, as you would hope any 2-seed would do. It's a nice, easy game. Everybody got minutes. You saw a little Tommy Loose action. Isaac Haas takes a spill to the ground. It wasn't like Robbie's at Minnesota, however many years ago that was, where immediately you hold your breath and you know it's bad. Because this is the part that's sad, is because we've seen that so many times, and it's because he gets thrown around and opponents climb on him like he's a jungle gym for 40 minutes of a basketball game every single game he plays. Every game. He is a human jungle gym, and it's only because he's 7'2", and it's not right. If you can't tell by the tone of my voice, it is not right. He deserves equally amount of calls as anybody else in the league, and he doesn't get them. He never has. Never has. This is the first game he missed in his 4 years. First game he did not play in 4 years of basketball. For how much he gets thrown to the ground, tripped, mauled, hacked, pulled down. It's amazing it's the first game he's missed. He is a tough dude with a lot of heart who doesn't complain. He sticks to business. He grabs his hard hat and he grabs his tool belt and he goes to work every single game. And it's not fair that this is the way he has to go out, because he deserves to go out with his 3 senior brothers, and they deserve to go out on top. So that part makes me sick to my stomach. It has since the news broke, and it sticks with me. And I appreciate his effort. I know he's been very vocal to the media saying he wants to play, and I mean the kid has heart. Say what you want. The heart matches the height for Isaac Haas. It's a direct representation. He is as tall as his heart is big. And you just have to hope for the best. You have to hope this doesn't hold him back when it comes to summer league basketball and getting drafted and workouts. You have to hope that it's a clean surgery and he's able to be back to 100%, and his future is so bright. There's going to be a team that takes a chance on him, and he's going to make them look like geniuses because of his work ethic, his frame, and just his overall makeup as a person. What should we expect? I think everybody in Lafayette's working on a brace. There's no doubt about that. The media's been pretty out and open about the fact that there's some Purdue engineering professors here on campus working on a brace. And this is stuff that you've all probably heard. Like, this is not breaking news. So I'm just kind of repeating what I read, what I hear, what I know, and what everybody else knows. And if you aren't up to speed, well, that's where I'm here to help, because I think it's important that we all are on the same page with this. Coach Painter came out and he said that there are 2 things he must do to even think about seeing the court. He's got to be able to grab a rebound with 2 hands over his head, and he's got to be able to shoot a free throw right-handed. Now, we saw him in practice shooting warm-ups on Sunday, shooting free throws with his left hand. He was nailing them, which is amazing. He was hitting like 5 in a row. For me to hit 5 in a row with my good hand, the chances of that happening are not very likely. So he was unable to do it, and the brace automatically wasn't cleared. It was cleared by the NCAA office, but the rule is the office could clear it, but the ref on site gets final say. They look at it. The NCAA office is clearing the fact that everything in the brace is legal. Every piece of material in the brace is legal. Then it's up to the referee on site to decide if it's too big, bulky, or if it could be a weapon or danger to everybody else on the court. So Painter's rule from the get-go has been he's got to be able to grab a rebound and shoot a right-handed free throw. He was unable to do that. Now, has that changed? I don't know. Time will tell. And then how effective can he be? Because we all appreciate him wanting to be out there. It's a matter of can he be effective and can he stay without hurting himself worse or putting a serious risk to his health in the future, because that's something you got to take into account. And coming from a former player who's played through injuries, I mean, everybody out there who played a sport probably played through an injury or got injured. You don't play sports without the realization you're going to get hurt and you're going to be injured. And for a lot of us out there, the future and long term, like that doesn't matter in the moment for these athletes. It does not matter. It makes you angry when people talk about long term because you don't want to hear it. You're worried about right now because right now you feel like crap and you want to get out there and play. And that's how he is. I guarantee it. He wants to play. He wants to be out there with his guys. He wants to help this team. He wants to win a national title. That's a competitor. That's somebody who loves the sport, who loves his team, who loves his program. So you have to have somebody on the other side playing devil's advocate, worried about his health and his long-term longevity and what's best for him as a person and just overall well-being health. That's Matt Painter. And that's phenomenal if you have a coach like that. There's coaches out there that they'll take their player's word and they'll throw them back in there to the lion's den. Not Coach Painter. He cares about these athletes as people and as like kids of his own. So he's worried about his well-being, his overall health, and limiting as much risk as possible for him to do something that will jeopardize his future in the NBA and just his overall well-being as a person. That's where Matt Painter and the training staff here at Purdue come in to play, and they're doing a fantastic job. Coach Painter is doing to a T the right move. And if you're mad at Coach Painter because he keeps saying that he doubts Isaac Haas will play and he's got a broken elbow, we got to remember that. If you are mad at him for not pushing Isaac to go out there on the court, you are wrong. You are not looking at the situation with an open mind. You're kind of being selfish because you're kind of wanting the best for this team and you want to watch us win more than you care about him. So what Coach Painter is doing is right. He is playing this perfectly. Now, if Isaac shows that he can defend himself and he's not thinking about it and he can shoot that free throw, he can grab that rebound, and he can help this team on the court, he'll play. And he has a brace that's legal and he's not going to get hurt worse, he'll play. What are the chances of that? Well, I don't know. Time will tell, won't it? I hope for his well-being that he finds some comfort in this. I hope that I know it meant a lot to him what those guys went out there and did on Sunday for him, and that was a good Butler team who played extremely well. And just kind of recapping that game, phenomenal effort. From top to bottom, phenomenal effort from everybody involved, especially the big men. Jaquil Taylor and Matt Harms came to play. They rose to the occasion. Short-term notice, new role that they haven't been in all year. For Jaquil, amount of minutes he's never seen all year. And in one of the biggest moments, Matt Harms and Jaquil Taylor stepped up. And you look at the box score, and this is why stats don't tell everything. You look at the box score for Jaquil Taylor, and you'll see 7 minutes, 1 field goal, 1 rebound, 2 points. And you'll think that that's nothing. Wrong. Those were some 7 extremely quality minutes out of Jaquil. And I bet that number gets up near 12 to 15 on Friday. If he plays at that level again, that's where those will be. No turnovers, huge. No fouls, huge. He didn't have any blocks, but he altered about 3 shots near the rim, and he did a phenomenal job of getting a body on somebody each and every time so somebody could grab the rebound. He was great. He brought energy, he brought passion, he brought emotion. And I'm going to tell you a little quick story about Shaquille. This is a story that probably nobody knows. But earlier this year, I think it was after the Michigan game. It was the day after the Michigan game, and it's players get the day off. There's no practice. They're not required. The time is to themselves. They can do whatever they want. They can go shoot hoops. They can stay at home and play video games all day. They can go to class and then do homework and catch up on whatever, watch Netflix, whatever they want. It's an off day. It's your typical off day. No media, no nothing. It's a day off, day of rest to recuperate after the game. After every game, they get this. So I'm in the Mackey on the floor, and it's me and Brett Douglas. If you remember Brett, he joined us on the show earlier in the year before the basketball season started. We'll get him back on here soon to get his insight on what he thinks the tournament, how the tournament's gone, and we'll probably get him in for a little recap and a little preview for softball and baseball coming up in the spring. But anyways, Brett and I were in the basement of Mackey, so on the floor level, working on a video shot. I was doing like a feature story, and we're filming, and we hear somebody dribbling and shooting, and we're like, oh, that's weird. Like who's practicing in Mackey? The women's team was on the road. Men's team had the day off. We just couldn't figure it out. So we go walking out to the floor, and standing there alone, working on post moves and shooting free throws is Shaquille Taylor. Nobody else there. No cameras, no coaches, no managers, no nothing. It's just Shaquille. And he's just working. I mean, he's got a full lather on, full sweat, just working, just shooting, just trying to get better. It's a kid who's seen very limited minutes this year. He's been injury-plagued his entire career. He's had some of the toughest luck. But if you ask anybody on that team, he is one of the best teammates you could ever ask for. He is the definition of a great teammate. And in a year where he didn't see much time and he's trying to recover from a foot injury, I can't imagine the amount of struggle and turmoil this guy's gone through just his first 4 years here at Purdue. He's out there working on his off day. He could have been anywhere. He could have been doing anything. You know how much drive somebody has to have to go out there and put on a full workout? And he was probably, I don't know how long he was there before we got there, but he was there for the entire 30 minutes that we were working on things. And he wasn't shooting half-court shots or messing around. No, he was in the paint by himself shooting free throws, post moves, whatever it took, just trying to get better. Look at him now. His number was called. He stepped in. He gave us quality minutes, and I expect the same from him Friday night. I'm so happy for the kid because he deserves it. He deserves success because he's been through so much turmoil and he's overcome it and kept such a great attitude about it that I look forward to seeing what happens next. So I just want to get that story out there about Shaquille because it's the first thing I thought about when it was the first thing I thought about when I saw that he was going to start getting some minutes was that moment because I'm like, he's ready. He's ready for this. Looking at some predictions for this upcoming Sweet 16 round, I will take... Well, first off, let's talk about my prediction from last week because I know I was wrong. Man, that's the third time somebody's called here, and I keep hanging up on them because we just don't have time for phone calls today. I'm very sorry. And if it was a slow day, you can bet I would be the first one to pick it up and see who's on the end of the line. But we just don't have time today. All right. So my prediction last week was the Big Ten would have more teams in the Sweet 16 than the Big 12. I did not win that bet. Big 12 got in Kansas State, which is ridiculous. That's all I really need to say about that. They got to play Creighton then UMBC. Give me a break. I never thought that UMBC would beat Virginia. Nobody did. And you best believe I was rooting hard for UMBC to beat them after that. Can't believe they beat them. And I can't believe Kansas State, they walked to the Sweet 16. So that was 1. West Virginia, I had that one picked as 2. I didn't think Texas Tech would be there. I truly didn't. I thought Florida would beat them. That's the 3rd. Kansas is the 4th. I thought they'd be there. I thought it would just be Kansas and West Virginia. This whole Kansas State and Texas Tech is a good team. I just didn't respect them. The Kansas State thing is insane. And then I would have tied my bet if the Kansas State UMBC game didn't happen, but I don't get to tie my bet because thanks, Michigan State. Way to lay an egg against Syracuse. That was some of the worst half-court offense I had seen all year long. I'd never seen that kind of offense before. You have like 3 lottery picks on the floor, and that's the best offense you can get? That was a bad game. That was an ugly game. So, yes, Big 12 beat me, but I get my revenge Friday night because the Boilermakers are going to knock out one of these Big 12 teams that in this superior conference that's supposed to be all that great. My predictions for this weekend are Kansas State against Kentucky. I'll take Kentucky in that one. So then they will face off against either, and this is where it gets ridiculous, Loyola Chicago or Nevada. I like Loyola Chicago. I'm afraid that with a week now to think about it, it's not going to go well. But if Nevada comes out and shoots cold again, it might not go as well as we all think it would. So I'm torn. So I'm going to go with my heart and who I'm going to root for. Loyola Chicago is going to move on to face Kentucky in the Elite Eight. Kentucky is, that's just ridiculous. All right. Down in the West, you got Florida State against Gonzaga. Gonzaga looks really good. I think they continue to look great, and they beat Florida State. Michigan against A&M. A&M with a beatdown of North Carolina, and I mean a beatdown. I'm not sure they're that great, but they sure made themselves look amazing against North Carolina. I mean, did I say beatdown? Because that was a beatdown. Michigan beats them. Michigan to the Elite Eight. So, yeah, I got Michigan, Gonzaga, Kentucky, and Loyola on the left side. And then on the right side, which is a little bit more normal, I'd say. I wish you were on that left side. There's a lot of fun going on over there. Right side in our bracket is tough. It's pretty much chalk. Villanova, West Virginia. Really want West Virginia to win that game. I don't think they do it. I'll take Villanova. Texas Tech, Purdue, boiler up, hammer down. In the bottom, Kansas, Clemson. Clemson whooped Auburn. You want to talk about another beatdown? Embarrassing. Whooped them. Whooped them worse than A&M beat North Carolina. I mean, smoked them. Kansas beats Clemson. Syracuse, Duke. Duke wins that one. It's not even going to be close. Yeah, that's right. Hot take. So that leaves you Duke, Kansas, Purdue, Nova, Kentucky, Loyola, Gonzaga, Michigan. And I know that sometimes when I make these predictions, I say something. Like with the Big Ten tournament, I really messed up. And I know I'll say something, and then I'll completely pick the other team when I rehash it. I'm not writing this out in front of me. I should. You think I'd learn my lesson by now, but I just don't do it. So I'm sorry if my votes are conflicting. Just go with whatever team wins. That's the one I picked. It's not that hard. Speaking of Michigan, though, real quick, and their game against Houston. Well, first off, let's talk about their game against Montana because they came out in that first half and they had a little bit of a Big Ten tournament hangover, you can call it if you want, but they did not look very good. But then they ended up whooping Montana pretty good. Then they were that last game on Saturday night against Houston, the late one, and I had watched. I'm not exaggerating. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it. I watched 26 hours of basketball from Thursday at noon to Friday at 1 a.m. It was serious. 4 TVs in the basement. I did not see the light of day, and I am not joking around. So we get to Saturday night, and I'm exhausted because it's hard work to sit there and watch basketball. I know. I was exhausted. That first half is going, and it was just too boring for me. It was just hard to get through. So, wait a minute. We got a Brainy Bunch special report.
It's time
for another Brainy Bunch special report. The mission of the Brainy Bunch is not to break news, but to bunch it.
Here's the story.
Here is the story. I got tired, and I went to bed at halftime. I missed one of the best moments of the tournament so far. One of the best games. Trust me, I saw it like 40 times the next day, which is horrible. And I get it that it's on me, but I was exhausted, so I went to bed. I wake up, and boom, first highlight I see is that shot at the buzzer Michigan hits to beat them after Houston misses free throws to give them a chance. I was so mad at myself. Just figures. I mean, that game was so boring in the first half. I just couldn't do it. So I go to bed, and I wake up to that. Yes, and I know.
My problem, your problem, your problem, not my problem.
Yeah, I get it. It is my problem and not yours, but I was pretty mad about it. And I'm disappointed in myself, I guess is the best way to go over it. So that's it's tough. It's really tough. And I applaud Michigan for hitting the shot. I'm glad they're moving on because it helps. If Purdue was the only team left, that'd be cool from the Big Ten. But I also, for the sake of me defending the Big Ten so much on this show, I really needed somebody else to pull through and join us in the Sweet 16. Now I hope we get 2 in the Elite 8. And if we do, yeah, I'll double down. That'll knock out Texas Tech. And I think Kentucky beats Kansas State. Now we're talking on 2 versus 2. I'm not sure West Virginia can beat Villanova. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Kansas, I think, is a lock, so that's 1. If I can get 2 Big Ten teams in, we might have more Big Ten teams in the Big 12 and the Elite 8. I'm hoping for it. I'm not giving up on this yet because I think the Big 12 is overrated. I am on record multiple times on the show saying that, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is Friday night when the Boilers take on the Red Raiders. It's going to be a lot of fun. Get out to Brothers. Get out to Harry's. Do whatever you normally do when we win. Go through the same routine that you have all year long on these road games. Do exactly to a T what you did before and cheer your hearts out. And say what you want about this team. We're not as good without Isaac. There's no doubt. But there's a lot of heart on this team, and they're going to fight to the end. They will fight, scratch, and claw to the end. I can guarantee you that. You know, one more thing about this tournament before we move on, because I do want to get into some NFL talk here for the last 15 minutes before I sign off. But I'm sure a lot of my audience out there, especially you students here on campus, have seen Semi-Pro. And there was a moment there's a scene in Semi-Pro where they're playing basketball, and obviously it's a movie about basketball. That was totally unnecessary for me to say. Anyways, so there's a scene where they're playing a game, and this is when they turn the corner and they start getting good. And they're trying to get their attendance numbers up. That way they can move to the NBA. And so Will Ferrell, as playing Jackie Moon, he's like the GM of the team, and he's the publicist. He decides to put out there that it's free corn dog night if they score 125 points. And he's pretty sure they will never do that because they only score like 40 a game. But they're getting good now. And the entire city of Flint, Michigan, which is funny just to begin with because it's Flint, Michigan, comes out because they want to try to see the Tropics get to 125 points so they get free corn dogs. And there's the scene is Father Pat. He after they win the game and get the corn and the fans get the corn dogs, Father Pat comes by Jackie and starts pointing at the ground. He's like, "Corn dogs, Jackie, corn dogs." I don't know why that's so funny, but it's like one of the funniest scenes in the entire movie. And I was reading a list of funniest movie scenes online, and that is in the top 50 of all movies, which is crazy, but it's hilarious. And so all weekend long, anytime somebody got an and one, it was just instinct. We would all go, "Corn dogs." Here.
Corn dogs, Jackie. Corn dogs for all these people.
Yeah.
Corn dogs, Jackie. Corn Corn dogs for all these people.
All these people get corn dogs. And I still don't know why that's so funny to me, but it makes me laugh every single time I see it. So I'm hoping we get plenty of corn dogs on Friday night. Plenty of and ones. And so I'm calling this corn dog tournament for me because it's been entertaining, just like a corn dog is. You got a little bit of everything. You got a little bit of bread, a little bit of meat. You got a wooden stick in the middle. The structure of the tournament, your wooden stick will be your Villanova, your Kansas, your Duke, your Purdue. Your team's alive. You got the meat of the tournament still alive in your Texas Tech, I would consider the meat of your Texas Tech, your Clemson, your Syracuse, your teams your Michigan, Gonzaga, your teams that are always there, and then you got your breading. You didn't see it coming. You got your Loyola Chicago, you got your Kansas State, you had UMBC earlier, Florida State, A&M, a bunch of football schools. It's the corn dog tournament. So I hope we get corn dogs for everybody on Friday night and things go well for the Boilermakers.
Corn dogs, Jackie. Corn dogs for all these people.
If you think that's a really dumb analogy, join the club, but I went with it, and I'm pretty proud of myself for that one, so just leave me alone. All right, before we wrap up the show here, if you're just joining us, Next Point Wins, last 15 minutes of the program. Catch the entire show on the podcast, Next Point Wins at youtube.com. Subscribe there for free, and you'll get an update every time I post something new. I'll also post the interview I did at the top of the show with Jerry Palm of CBS Sports, bracketologist, Mr. RPI. I'll put that up on the website as well. That way, if you missed that, you can go back and check it out. He was phenomenal. Really do appreciate him coming on and helping out a fellow Boilermaker. And, yeah, hopefully we'll hear from him soon. So there's a lot of movement in the NFL. I'm going to get to this for the last 15 minutes before we close up shop here. I know I started the show a little early. Sorry to some of you who were counting on listening live. Some of you students, if you caught just like you might have missed the very beginning of the show. I started just a couple minutes early just because I had Jerry on the line, and I know he's busy today, and he had an interview coming up at about 12:30, so I wanted to make sure I got him through and off before, so he had plenty of time to do whatever he needed to do. I was watching his Twitter this morning, and he was like 4 different interviews, so I mean, I can't express enough how thankful I am that he came on the show. So anyways, I wanted to get him in and get him out, so I started a couple minutes, I think it was 2 minutes early. So if you missed the first 2 minutes of the show and you feel like you're cheated, students, go to YouTube and just watch it. All right, so there's a lot of movement at the NFL right now. In the top of the draft. And I can't say that I didn't see it coming, but I just didn't know it would be this challenging because there's a lot of teams that want a quarterback in this draft, and I don't think there's a lot of good quarterbacks to go around. There's a lot of decent quarterbacks who have the possibility of being great, but there's not very many for sure things. I don't think anybody out there who's smarter than me who looks at this draft and looks at tape as much as some of these scouts would sit there and say that this is a strong draft for quarterbacks. This is a strong class. It's not. But the Jets are making a strong push up the leaderboard, up the draft board to try to get a number 1 pick, try to get a quarterback high in the draft. I would look for the Browns to trade out of that number 1 pick, and I bet the Jets are a strong candidate to get it because they moved up ahead and they traded with the Colts. Colts traded down a little bit. Jets, they're trying to inch their way up there to the top. I think it was a great move for the Colts because they still might get Saquon Barkley or Nick Chubb. If all these teams really draft quarterback high, if you're in the top 10 of the draft right now and you do not need a quarterback, you are licking your lips because you could trade down and get a lot of really, really, really much needed assets and draft picks while still getting possibly the guy that you wanted at the pick you have. Because there's a chance that 4 or 5 quarterbacks go in this first 7 picks. That's going to leave a Saquon Barkley or a Nick Chubb or a Peters, offensive lineman from Notre Dame. Somebody like that's going to drop. And they're going to drop to 7 or 8 or 9. And there's going to be somebody sitting there with their eyes wide open like, whoa, I just got more draft picks. I traded down and I still get the player I want, a top 5 caliber player. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be happy if this keeps panning out the way it sounds. There's going to be a lot of overdrafted quarterbacks. There's going to be a lot of quarterback busts because some of these guys just aren't the level of caliber as they're going to get drafted, and it's not their fault. And they're going to get paid. Don't get me wrong. They're going to get that top 10 money, but it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a very interesting draft in these next couple of weeks because I really do expect the Jets to keep moving their way up and probably get up to that number 1 pick. If the Browns truly are going to not go with a quarterback first, if they're going to wait and get maybe a Lamar Jackson or Josh Rosen. But who knows if they're even going to be there whenever they want to take them. So Jets, strong candidate. Niners, they made some nice moves, getting some wide receivers to help Jimmy Garoppolo. You look at the Cardinals, they need a quarterback. Look for them to make a move up the board. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Last couple minutes here on the show, and then we'll get out of here. Update on Isaac Haas for you. I have that there is no update on Isaac Haas for you. So there you go. If you're like frantically refreshing Twitter often today or yesterday or these next couple days, I don't expect you to find much that you want to see because first off, it's gamesmanship either way. If he's going to play or if he's not going to play, I don't see Purdy really doing much announcing before the game on Friday. And I think a lot of it has to do with how he feels day to day. He's got a broken elbow. I know it's easy to forget, but it really shouldn't be. So just be patient, hope for the best, and, well, that's that. Boilermakers in action, 10 o'clock Friday night against Texas Tech. Winner moves on to the Elite Eight to take on either Villanova or West Virginia. It's by far the hardest bracket left. But, hey, you got to, at this point, when you get to the Sweet 16, you're going to have to beat good teams each and every game out in order to have a shot. How do I think we're going to come out and play? I think we're going to come out and play hard again. I mean, this team, it's almost a given they're going to come out and play hard. It's going to be a little different because you have a little bit more time to prepare. So we're going to be a little smarter, I think. Maybe we'll get out to a little bit of a faster start. On the other side of it, now you have a Jaquil Taylor and a Matt Harms and even a Grady Eifert who have bumped up in their minutes in production, and they have a whole week to think about it. And that's where it can get dangerous. And that's why I think Loyola Chicago could be in trouble as well. If once you get to that second week, you got a whole week of people on your campus talking to you about how great you are, especially for like Loyola. I mean, they're the talk of the city. So you got a lot of interview requests. You got a lot of people at media day that you're not used to seeing. You got a lot of people keeping an eye on you, and it can get overwhelming. It can make you lose focus quickly. It takes a great coach to keep everybody focused in on what needs to happen. So if they're able, if Loyola is able to stick with their game plan and keep doing what they're doing, they are equally as good as Nevada and equally as capable of knocking them off. And one might say that it's an easier opponent than Miami was. So can't wait to watch it. I'm going to be watching every moment of it. Baseball and softball are home. First homestands of the year for Purdue baseball and softball. Weather's kind of messing with the schedule, so check out Purdue softball and Purdue baseball on Twitter and at PurdueSports.com if you're trying to get out to a game this weekend. I know I'm going to be at the game Friday. It's now a doubleheader starting at 2 o'clock. I'll be at the 2 o'clock game, and then there's a game following it. I won't be at that one. I was supposed to call softball on BTN Student U on Saturday, but that's been moved to Wednesday and Thursday. The first game's tonight, so I won't be out there for those. But, you know, it's spring here in Indiana. We had snow today. It's freezing cold, so it's tough to get some of these early games in because you just don't know what the weather is going to be. So if you're trying to get out there, looking for something to do this weekend, taking a break from basketball, go check out Purdue softball, Purdue baseball. And I think Purdue soccer has a scrimmage Friday night at Folk Field against Notre Dame. It's free admission for all students for all of those events. So check them out. Purdue women's basketball heading to IU for a game tomorrow night against Indiana University in the WNIT. They knocked off IUPUI and Ball State the last two games, so they're in the third round, the Sweet 16 of that. Nope, I think it's Sweet 16. 1, 2, Sweet 16 of that. So they're kind of doing the Indiana tour around. They're doing the Indiana tour around the state in this WNIT tournament. So hopefully they can get revenge on IU, who have beaten them twice this year. So third time's a charm, maybe, for the basketball team. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. We will sign off with that. One last time, thank you to Jerry Palm for joining us on the show. Catch anything you missed on the podcast. And don't forget, corn dogs, Jackie. Corn dogs. Everybody here, corn dogs.
Corn dogs, Jackie. Corn dogs for all these people.
This has been Next Point Wins.